Hey, welcome to Curse Breakers, where we leverage your astrology to empower you. I'm Jacki Smith, and I'm here with my co-host and chief astrologer, Storm Cestavani. This show is sponsored by Coventry Creations, where they have magical solutions for your everyday issues. Here at Curse Breakers, we let the stars lead you. By the way, if you like this show, please like or subscribe, or better yet, share this show so others can find us. Liking and subscribing this show really does help others find this show, and it really helps us out. Hey, Storm, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm really excited that we're back.
Well,
It's been a minute.
Been a weird year. I mean, with the weather being something that I have not seen since the early 90s. Then I got a weird flu that was the worst flu I've had in ever.
A long time since we were recording a different show.
Yeah.
And you were down for almost a month.
Yeah. This has not been, I'm going through a Chiron return. So,
okay.
Issues in regards to health and healing and woundedness and all of that, interesting things, have all decided that they're going to plague me all at one time. So,
and then I did, and then I was at a convention, and so it's really hard to record right before the convention. And then, man, I left it all there. So I was wiped out right after. Plus you were sick. And
so, I mean, the thing here that people should know is that we're going to give you Curse Breakers. We don't know when exactly, but you will get episodes of Curse Breakers.
And that's the thing about Curse Breakers. It just happens when you need it.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about what it is that you need when you need it. Speaking of which, Jacki, in our last episode, we discussed where I did a lecture at WitchCon, which was called Bending the Planets to Your Will. And we took some interesting factors out of that and rolled it into a particular episode. I also wrote several blogs in regards to new moon and full moon magic, which people can find on my website, because I wanted to be really clear about something that I said during the show that was a little bit controversial, which was when was the best time to do those particular spells and the moments that it's too late.
I haven't stopped thinking about that. Yeah. And we were in disagreement, which I love. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, Storm said it's not right now, but I'm doing it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, people can do magic when they need to do magic. That's all that I'm saying is that if your approach to magic is from an astrological perspective, which is a different modality than other forms of magic altogether. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then probably if that is your intention going in, you should probably follow the rules of astrological magic. If you want to get the most of that. But I did write 2 blogs, one on the full moon, one on the new moon, that people can go look at. And it explains out the whole timing factors in more of a way that I can do, where people can read it and digest it, Jacki, than, a 30-second soundbite.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it.
Now, you just did 2 lectures.
I did 3.
It's been the season of this.
Yeah. I did 3, but we're only going to talk about 2 of them.
It's the season of, I don't know. Maybe we should call February, like teaching season or something. We're going into lecture season. And I actually, one of the things that both of us have is that, you had access to my class before, I even went in and did it. I have access to both of these particular classes, plus something new that's coming up from Miss Jacki Smith. So I wanted to ask you some questions about it. Okay. I think that they were both very, very interesting topics, first of all. And where I want to start is that in one of your lectures, you titled it, "Don't Be a Dick." Now, why did you choose such a bold and direct approach? And how do you think that humor plays into discussing magical ethics?
Well, I loved calling it "Don't Be a Dick" and other basics of magical ethics, because really in some great conversations that I've had with people about ethics, I said, doesn't it just boil down to just not being a dick? And then what was so fun about that comment is the pushback was, sometimes you got to be a dick. And it came from women. is that in ethics, it's like, but sometimes your own ethics is you have to push back. You have to be a dick to not be stepped on. And I'm like, I love this. I love this conversation because ethics are so personal and they're so situational. There's no hard and fast rule on ethics. And really it comes down to your own personal ethics. And that's what I wanted this class to be, is about, to challenge you and say, do you have personal ethics? Because so many of us are driven by what we see in social media.
Right.
Like we're appalled at what has just been posted. I can't believe
we will
that
be discussing
person
that, by the way. So
just said that on social media, and they're saying that, especially in the political arena, because we're seeing like, okay, I gotta tell you something. There's something that totally took me off my pins on Sunday. And you saw me post a little thing about it, which is weaponizing empathy. Storm, I couldn't sit down all day because I was pacing and pissed off about it until somebody explained how that could potentially happen. But the thing I'm mad about it is that how many people are buying into this weaponizing empathy. But that's a whole thing about personal ethics, about how also it's from the Nazi playbook, P.S. And how people are if you don't understand your own personal ethics, you can be pulled right in to how somebody else's definition of this can suddenly become your own definition of it, and you can be completely pulled out of your own ethics.
Right. One of the things that you do is that you introduce something that's called the ethical triangle, which has to do with values, morality, and ethics. Now, why is this so important to separate these three when making magical decisions?
So let's talk about where the ethical triangle comes from. And what's so great is when I was brushing up my notes before the class, the Monday before I taught it, because this is what happens with me. I'm going to teach something, and then I'm reviewing my notes, and I want to flesh out some things, and and I find a new thing, and I'm like, oh, and then I completely rewrote it.
Right.
So the ethical triangle first was introduced by Guy B. Adams and Danny L. Balfour in a book that they wrote, which I lost my notes on what the book was. Oops. And then, and that was in the 80s. And then in the 2000s, Dr. Jack D. Kem, actually, so these two guys brought in the idea of these three things. And then Dr. Kem then, in a book that he wrote for the armed forces, actually talked about the ethical triangle because he was teaching ethics for the armed forces. So I thought that was amazing. But the reason why the three are separate is because the values are your inner compass, and that's what actually matters to you. And your morality, and I'm going to blow your mind. Your morality is the system of right and wrong that was given to you. You inherited it. You didn't create it. Other people created it, and it was given to you by your family, society, culture, tradition. And then your ethics is the personal rules that you live by when A, no one is watching, and B, you're under stress.
And when nobody is watching, let me tell you, those ethics look a lot different than they do when you're driving outside your house.
Yeah. So, but it's not just when no one is watching. It's when you're in crisis and no one is watching.
Right.
Because those are two factors that need to be in play, and when you really test your ethics.
One of the things that I loved that you talked about is the issue in regards to gray areas of magic. One of which, of course, is love spells, which tend to be one of the most controversial topics when you talk about magical ethics. I mean, everybody's got an opinion on it. Now,
and it's, you know what? And it's not necessarily, and it's newer in its gray area. Before it was like, love spell, don't be too manipulative about it. And remember, everyone has free will. Now people are talking about it's, consent.
Right. Now, where do you personally draw the ethical line when it comes to influencing free will?
Where do I personally draw the line?
Yeah. Where
Or
Where I want to know where you draw the line.
but isn't it all situational? Isn't it?
That's an answer. I mean, uh, I I personally think that it is.
Okay, so let's throw something out there.
Sure.
I'm applying for a loan. Let's say I'm applying for a loan.
Well, that's not love magic.
well, hang on.
Okay.
Is it?
Okay.
Is it?
I mean, are you hiring an OnlyFans model?
Oh, hang on a second.
Okay.
Is it? Okay. Or let's throw it out there in a different way. Let's say I want to lease a new building, and there's a couple people who put in an application to lease this building, and I want the landlord to pick me.
Right.
I want the landlord to love me, to have more confidence in me than the other person. And so I do a honey jar spell on the landlord. Is that love magic?
To an extent, yes. And I think that what you're drawing into is that, in astrology, the planet Venus, interestingly enough, because I think that she's probably the goddess with the least amount of values, she rules money, she rules love, and she also she rules our values. Okay, what it is that we value, and she also rules our self-worth. I find it interesting that you bring that up from that perspective, because a lot of people, wouldn't think to use attraction magic in those types of situations that you brought up in regards to getting a job or a boss to like you, and tweaking a classic love spell in a different sort of way. So just don't get him to fall in love with you. That's not
right.
That's
right. Just be clear on my intention.
Very clear.
so going back to like legit love magic for romantic purposes. So my philosophy on that is the most powerful love magic is what you do on yourself.
Right.
See, my philosophy around magic is you can only do magic on yourself. I shouldn't say only, but the most powerful magic is the magic you do on yourself. You don't. When you do magic on yourself, you shift your world. And when you shift your world, you open up possibilities. So when you do magic on other people, you haven't changed your world. There's something broken or discordant in your world. So that you could throw that attraction spell out there, and you can throw that bait out there, and you can hook that fish and pull it in. But if there's something discordant in that world, pulling that in, your line's going to break on the way in.
Right.
So, if you shift your world, that fish is just going to flow right to you. So you fix that, and then you just become magnetic to it. That's my philosophy on love magic and any magic. And I got a whole thing that I'm going to talk to you about later about that. But that's how I feel about love magic. Now, if you are, if you're already in a relationship and you need to spice up the night with your partner, there's so many things you can do for that. And then there's things that you can do glamour magic. And then there's, if there's somebody who's, really close and you need to make sure that they know you're interested, there's things you can do about that. So I'm always about in big things like attracting a new love in your life. And some of the most powerful spells, like, there's this one spell my friend teaches, Sugar in Her Panties, which is it's like a jar spell, and you're doing things to attract the right person. If you look at it, it is essence, because you're clearing away what doesn't work for you and you're attracting what you really want. That's inner work. So some of these are really powerful spells that attract somebody in your life. It's big inner work.
Right.
So,
which is why, Venus rules, I think, two of the biggest areas, that we have to develop, which is our own sense of values and our own self-worth. And I feel as though that if people used Venusian magic in that sort of way, the other stuff is just going to kind of take care of itself. I mean, you're just going to, if you work on your own self-worth, you're just going to be more magnetic, and that's going to draw people to you. Exactly. Now, of course, girl, spells go awry all the time. And I love that you talked about cleaning up magical messes. Now, what do you think is the most common mistake that people make when a spell backfires or has unintended consequences?
Like why they have unintended
No,
consequences?
if they're doing a spell,
Okay.
and for example, they do a love magic spell, and rather than attracting Steve the hunk, they attract Jim Bob the nerd.
You're in the wrong mental
Yeah.
space. Often when things go awry is when you're in a panic.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's and my philosophy, there's only 5 types of magic that you
Right,
do. You
right.
do magic for a physiological need, usually a money material need. You do magic for protection. You do magic for companionship, aka love magic. You do magic to heal something, or you do magic to clear something. So a lot of times when excuse me, a little dry throat there. A lot of times when you're doing magic for love, you think, and you're kind of like you're really lonely, or you're feeling desperate, or you're not in the right mental state. Really, what you needed to do was clearing magic. You needed to clear how you felt about it and to get to the real issue. So when magic goes awry, you've done the wrong magic.
Right. I agree with you, and I think that oftentimes, where you were talking about the 5 areas of magic, I think that a lot of people approach love magic, at least in the beginning, they do love magic on very primitive things. For example, they simply want to have an orgasm, so they want to attract somebody. So it's about pleasure and feeling good. It's not looking at the larger based issues. And I think that when you don't look at the larger based issues of what it is that you really want and what it is that you need, and those are often sometimes 2 different things out of a relationship, okay, that it can really go in a crazy sort of way.
So there's nothing wrong with that glamour type magic, that pleasure based magic, which is glamour. Okay. And there's always the repercussions. So, so people think that I'm going to go get laid tonight. So I'm going to put on my Cleome oil, or I'm going to do the glamour magic, and I'm going to go out to the club or the bar or whatever, and I'm going to get laid. Okay. Is there anything wrong with that in in their personal ethics? If there's nothing wrong with that in their personal ethics, and they're just picking up somebody for a one night stand or whatever, that's fine. And understand that there is a chain of events that gets put into play. Mm-hmm. It's not an ethical conundrum if there is a mess that's created later. So if you don't know if this person was already in a relationship, you don't know if this person is clingy, you don't know if they have an STD, you don't know if all of these things. So your only intention was to get laid, and that worked.
Right.
So don't worry about the rest of it. You're not worried about the rest of it. That's not an ethical conundrum at that point.
But don't you find that people, because love is such a tricky issue, that although that their intention tonight is to go out and get laid, do you think that the surface or the higher level over that, Jackie, may be that they're actually looking for somebody to connect with, and that is where this can start to go awry?
Now this is why I taught this class, Don't Be a Dick, because if you take time and work on your own ethical triangle before you start building these spells and doing this big magic, if you understand who you are before you start building the rest of your life, then if you do a glamour spell to go out and get laid, you've already built your ethics, and you've already decided, oh, well, I'm going to make sure that they're single. I'm going to kind of ask a few questions to make sure that they're not clingy, and maybe they're from out of town, so they're not going to show up again. I'm going to make sure that I bring all the right accoutrements so an STD is a non-issue. I'm going to make sure that I'm safe and that I have friends that are going to call me. I'm going to make so I've already built my own ethics. So when no one's watching, aka all my friends in my social circle, I'm going to be okay because I've already built my ethics, because I've already questioned them. And that's the point of this class.
I think it was a very good point. Now, people have really strong ethical stances until something personal happens. Now,
Oh, yeah.
why do you think it's so easy to justify bending the rules when emotions get involved?
Oh, because 100% of us bend the rules when emotions get involved. And we all have deal breakers. So, and that's human. That's human. And we can't. Okay, so again, there's a difference between values, morals, and ethics.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes the ethical triangle. So you can't say my ethics are this. So your values speak to your ethics. So your values become the touch points. They become the why of your ethics. And then your morals, until you question them, are someone else's. I want to talk about morals for a second.
Sure.
Mind blown. Mind blown when I read this, and then I really understood it. Morality is the set of rules about right and wrong that were handed to you, and you just blindly accepted them. Okay, think about this. So the folks that are listening that are in the pagan metaphysical world, the rule of three, that's morality.
Right.
The Wiccan Rede, thou shalt harm none, that's handed to you. The golden rule in Christianity, that's handed to you. And if you've never questioned it, until you question it, until you say, okay, why is this definition? Whose definition is it? Where did it come from? What is good and bad in it? So like, what is the good? What is the bad? What is acceptable and what is forbidden? Okay, like the rule of three,
Mm-hmm.
like what is acceptable and what is forbidden. And here's the thing that blew my mind. Who is worthy and who is not within this rule? Because every bit of morality has a who is worthy and who is not.
Okay.
Mind blown when I started thinking about that. That there's a good and a bad, and then there's which is acceptable and forbidden is a little bit different than the good and the bad. Because the good and the bad is like a little gray area, but the acceptable and forbidden is the black and the white. And then the who is worthy. That's where you start judging people, is within morality.
Right. Now, my feeling here is where people are going to get confused with that, Jackie, is that, say, for example, when you go into things like hexing and cursing and doing even some forms of protective magic, for that matter. For example, if you have Witch A, who is an absolute, you should not curse anybody at any point. You should not do any form of binding spells. You should not do anything that is going to, quote unquote, hurt another person. And then something happens to them. Somebody steals their daughter's checkbook and takes all their money. And then they're all ready to go gangbang crazy, hexing the individual. I think that that's where people are going to get a little bit confused in regards to issues such as like morality. And basically, why do you think it's so easy when people are going through those circumstances to bend those rules?
So because they have conflicting values. You can, when you don't, I'm going to step back 1 second. So the interesting thing about values, and businesses do this all the time, and this is kind of how I jumped into this, is when I had so many times, the first thing any business course has you do is talk about the values, the mission, and the vision of your company. And if your company does not have values, then you don't understand what to say yes and what to say no to. Then you can easily get pulled off your mission and your vision. And your values are a litmus test of like, do I do this? What is my HR like? What type of people do I hire? That kind of thing. And so that's what got me into thinking about ethics, because if you don't have ethics for your company, you become an asshole company. You become a very toxic place to work. And that's not what I want for my company. So living by your values in your company makes a healthier company. So wouldn't living by your values as a human make you a healthier human? That's how this whole thing started.
Right.
So if you have conflicting values, like for instance, let's say justice is, or actually let's go backwards. Let's say compassion is a very strong value for you. And then like you're picking your top 5 core values. Compassion is a value for you. Respect is a value for you. Kindness is a value for you. And justice is a value for you. Well, those actually conflict.
Right.
Compassion and justice conflict.
Right.
So if you understand that those two are going to conflict, so you're very compassionate, so you're never going to hex, and you're never going to bind somebody, and everyone has this free will, and you understand that everyone's coming with their own pain until someone in your life gets hurt by someone else, and then you're mama bear, and you're going to take them out. You're going to slash their they're going down. And because justice is another one of your core values.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
I think it's very interesting, and one of the things that I think that, and it's one of the biggest questions that I had in regards to that, to follow up behind that particular question, is with social media being such a huge part of the magical world now, do you think conversations about ethics are evolving, or are they just getting messier?
Oh, they're getting messier, and I think they're devolving.
Praise you. I think that you're right. I mean, the number one, I think what in many cases has been created is a world of keyboard warriors, who absolutely have a right to have their particular opinion about things. And, I get emails all the time in regards to, the big one in regards to, and I don't know if you get this or not, Jackie, is the big one that I get mainly is how people think I should do my work and what my creative process should be.
They just should it all over you.
Yeah, and I get a lot of emails in regards to things of that nature, to the point that I went down a rabbit hill last weekend, but I still wasn't feeling 100%, so I let myself go through the rabbit hole, knowing I was going through the rabbit hole, and found the rabbit hole kind of entertaining. But there's a lot of people have opinions about things, and a lot of the things that I'm seeing right now in regards to people expressing their particular opinions seems to be not something that's well thought out. I don't mind a well thought out disagreement. What I do mind is a knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying by that?
I agree, because I'm becoming a knee-jerk reaction person.
Oh, you are?
I am a little bit, just because
Where is your teapot, girl? Because I need the tea.
Well, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a little beaten down by things. And so for me, so my ethical triangle is feeling a little beat up lately. And so when people are very intolerant and willfully ignorant on how things work, and willfully unkind, I just don't have tolerance for that.
Right.
So my knee jerk is to ghost them, to block them, to eliminate them from my life.
Whereas I think that possibly a more productive way of dealing with it, Jackie, is not to do that. I think the more productive way of dealing with it is the way that you did deal with it, where you wrote something about or empathy, in regards to allowing yourself to sit with this a moment and say, what is what is really bothering me here about this and about this particular statement, and how can I express my opinion in a mindful way rather than a reactive way.
It's really interesting. I thought that post would get more comments or likes.
Girl, let me tell you, the only way you get more comments and likes is if you get on there and you say, so-and-so is a dick.
I got to tell you, I also posted that day the pot pies that I made. And that's got like hundreds.
Because
hundreds.
That tells you a lot in regards to what it is that people value at this particular point. And I think that one of the things that people value, just based upon, number one, having a degree in psychology, number two, being somebody that is interested in people and their motivations, period. But what I'm seeing is that everything in its simplistic form, like you posting up a picture of Popeyes, or somebody posts up a picture of their dog. I can post up a picture right now of my cat. Okay. It's going to get hundreds and hundreds of likes. Okay. He's an adorable cat. He's 32 pounds and a big, huge blue Russian. And you've seen pictures of him, Jackie. He's going to get a million. He's going to get likes. I could make his own Instagram account. But it tells me that the world out there may be too much for people to process at this particular point. So when they see things like us talking about something that we think is important, i.e. empathy, the scary thing is that to most people, it's not really that important. It's just not.
Empathy. Excuse me. Empathy is hard. Empathy is really hard. And a lot of times people think they have empathy, but they don't. They have empathy for people like them.
Right.
And empathy is a very hard emotion and value to hold. Very hard.
Exactly. And I think that keeping that in mind, if you could give just one piece of advice to someone trying to develop their own magical ethics, and then I want to move on to money, what would it be?
In developing your own magical ethics, I would say, you only want me to give one piece of advice?
Yes, one piece. That's all you get. One.
Is to understand what you value. If you can find your 5 values, then you will, and you might have to like write down all these words start by just doing a brain dump of words that of what matters most to you in life. And these are descriptive words like justice or love or honesty, compassion, loyalty, things like that. And do a brain dump, but pick 5 things, 5 core words that describe what matters to you most in life. Own it. And then look at how this shows up in your life. That's how you're going to really understand how these ethics work in your life.
Right. Now, the second class that you gave was called Shake Your Money Tree, a deep dive on prosperity magic. Now, you say something that's very, very funny in this. Okay. You say throwing a green candle at your bank account isn't working. Now, what are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about prosperity magic, and why do so many money spells fail?
Because a lot of money spells fail. Okay. Before I do this, is that I started this class by saying, welcome to Shake Your Money Tree, a deep dive on prosperity magic. This class now has 37% more magic and 100% less desperation. And everybody looked at me for several beats. And then one by one, they started to understand and started laughing. I loved that line. I thought that was hilarious.
Right.
And I think some of the misconceptions about money magic is that I'm going to light this candle, or I'm going to carry this coin, or that I'm going to do this one thing and then I'm going to be rich. That money magic is outside of you. That's the whole thing, is that all of these different spells of that you can read on the internet or that people talk about, is that money magic is outside of who you are. And that there's all these band-aids, and they work at different varying levels. I've done them. I'm kind of a pro at money magic, kind of like I'm a pro at dieting. It all works. It all works at varying levels.
Yeah.
It works for a while. Sometimes it works wildly well until your habits and your internal blocks and internal beliefs show up, and you go right back to the way you always run life. And the way you always run life does not fit with this ideal that you have. So you gotta go through and fix what's broken internally.
One of the things preparing for this particular interview, Jacki, that I did is that I went back and looked at the biggest memes in 2020.
In 2020?
Mm-hmm. And you're going to see where I'm going to go with this in just a second.
Okay.
One of the things that kept popping up was, we're all going to die. And I'm broke as hell. How am I going to make some money? Okay. And then you would see all of these, so I played around with a lot of Google search terms and then hit images. One of them was memes on finances in 2020. Okay. And it was basically, all of these desperate, memes in regards to, I need money to pay my bills and all this other stuff. Okay. And then a lot of them was, oh my Lord, I'm getting a check. Hallelujah. It worked. Now, the interesting thing that, and this is what I was thinking about when I was doing this, is that a lot of people at that particular point were putting a lot of emphasis on attracting stuff to them. But what they were not doing is putting a lot of emphasis on, in regards to how to sustain this. So a lot of, a lot of companies were getting, a huge amount of money that they then have to pay back. And a lot of people were getting lines of credits, then they're going to have to pay that back. And a lot of people were doing all of these little small things. And yes, they were attracting the money towards them. And then even, at a basic level is that people were receiving checks for the government. Then that was going to be affected in their tax returns at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like they were attracting stuff to them, but then it wasn't something that was sustainable. And one of the first things that you tackle in this workshop is money baggage. Now, how do you believe that early beliefs and subconscious programming impact our ability to manifest financial success?
Oh, it lies.
Because it feeds into that 2020 thing.
Oh yeah. It lies to us constantly. It drives the bus. Like, okay. So, there's a belief in my family, my parents had, is that there's never enough. There's never enough. We had 9 kids in the family.
Right.
We have to look. I'm finding something. Oh, I just found something. Let me tell you what I just found. We have to look the part and struggle underneath the surface.
Right.
We had a nice house. We had a nice house because it fit all of us. And my dad's an architect, so he had to.
You need a lot of house for 9 kids. A lot.
And as an architect, my dad had to have a nice house. It had to look good. And my mom studied interior design, so she always wanted it to look good.
Right.
And my parents always looked good. But under the surface, it was like, there's not enough money. You kids, you don't get a bike because you don't do enough around here. You're lazy. All of that stuff, because there was so much struggle. I said, Mom, can I get an allowance? As I'm like 8 years old. Mom, can I get an allowance? Because I want to blah, blah, blah. Because I want to buy my own bike because I didn't have a bike. There's no allowance in this family. Which that's okay. That's fine. Right. As a grown up, I can look at that going, oh yeah, that's okay. But I had a goal and I didn't have a bike. I didn't have a bike because my bike was stolen. My bike was stolen, even though it was locked up, but I was punished for it. So, but instead of saying, I'm sorry, honey, I know your bike was stolen and that's really horrible, and we just don't have the money to buy you a new bike, I was punished for it. So anything that went wrong. So see how that whole thing of there's not enough, although we have to look the part, drove the bus, and it still drives the bus in my life.
I think it drives the bus for a lot of people because a lot of, and you see it all the time, Jackie, where, somebody is making, a moderately decent salary, has some student loans they need to pay off and a little bit of credit card debt.
Mm-hmm.
And then they decide that they're going to go out and buy a $70,000 car. Okay.
Right.
Because the reason for them purchasing that $70,000 car rather than a nice $30,000 car is because they feel as though that they need to look this particular part. And if they look that particular part, it's going to open doors for them that would not ordinarily be open. And then at the end of the day, basically what they're doing is waiting for a door to open that may or may not open. Okay. And then at the same time, financially sabotaging themselves, which is where you introduce the concept of a prosperity gremlin. That little voice in your in our heads sabotaging our financial flow. Now, what do you think that the most common thing people discover when they meet their own gremlin?
So there's not a common theme. So number one, I was super surprised on how many people showed up. This class was the last class for the entire weekend. It was like 1:00 on Sunday, which usually is the least attended time slot because everyone's got to check out of the hotel.
Right.
Everybody's tired. They're over everything.
Yeah.
They're over it.
Right.
But I packed the classroom. The classroom.
Of course, it's about money.
Right. Well, yeah, and it's about
if it would have been a class on empathy, there would have been nobody there. I'm just saying.
Well, what's funny is that the ethics class, which they did not. I mean, I put this class in to teach for years, and they kept saying no, and then they asked me to teach this year because I wasn't going to teach, and I said, well, this is the class I'm going to teach. That was packed as well. So I was, again, super surprised on that one.
Right.
So anyway, this is the least favored time to teach a class, and it was packed. So I was super surprised on that. And wait, what was your question again?
What's the common thing that people discover when they meet their own gremlin?
All of these people, no one had anything in common. So one gentleman later on told me that when he went to go meet his gremlin, it was a rock. And I said, well, what does that tell you? It's like, seriously, what is that? Because he went to go stand on the rock and then he slipped and he fell down a hole. And I'm like, well, seriously, like what does that tell you? I mean, that tells me a lot. And then he looked at me and was like, oh, duh. I'm like, yeah, because this issue is huge. It's big. And when you try and tackle it, you fall deeper down the hole. So you might need to look at why this prosperity gremlin is a rock in your life, a boulder, as it were.
I would have interpreted that psychologically as that there's some form of a belief inside of them that is an extremely solid, hard to budge belief.
Yep.
That they need to ultimately break through, even if they need like an excavation tool set.
We're in complete agreement
Right.
on that. Absolutely. And then another person said that suddenly they were whisked up into the sky. And then another person said, so different people. So the common theme is that people met something there. So that was the common thing, is they met something there, understanding that this is their own internal process.
So now, do you think that the meeting with so many people meeting something, meaning a being, of some nature, do you think that Jackie represents that many people feel that something out there may be thwarting their particular success, or that it is something outside of them that's doing it to them? What was your process when you were hearing that?
Well, the process with this whole thing, your money gremlin is you. This was going into your own Akashic records, your own psyche, and finding what's internal within you. So this is finding that belief or that block. So this was not an external process. This was an internal process. So what
Right.
was the money gremlin telling you? Um, so it's like, what is that belief? And, what did the money gremlin look like? Was it big and scary? Was it small? What color was it? What were the qualities that it had? And then what were the messages that it brought?
Right. Now,
And,
you emphasize, Jackie, that you can't out-manifest your subconscious fears, and this leads into that. What's the most effective way for somebody to rewrite a toxic money story and actually make it stick?
um, finding it and confronting it and bringing it out of the shadows. Just like I did, you heard me moments ago finding another piece of my story. You're going to find pieces of your story over and over again. And they're going to be new pieces. I just found a piece of my story and I just wrote it down and went, oh, this was the big one. And what I'm going to do after this show is I'm going to sit with this and I'm going to pull that piece out of the shadow and I'm going to say, oh, this is important because I've been struggling with a few things that represent this, like, and I wish I won't go into details right now. So I'm going to pull this out of the shadows and I'm going to rewrite this. The biggest thing, and this is magic. It's psychological magic, but it's also magic. And then you can anchor it in with magic. So I'm going to pull it out of the shadows. I'm going to write what it is and I'm going to journal this. And then I'm going to rewrite it. And in rewriting it, I'm going to potentially, there's a variety of things I can do. I'm going to maybe put a sigil on top of it to anchor in what I've rewritten.
Right.
I'm going to distill it down to one phrase, maybe take that one phrase and turn that into a sigil. I'm going to maybe put that sigil on a candle holder and write and burn a candle on my desk or somewhere in my life where I can see it. Maybe I'll put that sigil on a piece of paper and put it in my pocket. Maybe I'll just keep that phrase close to me and continue to say it. Or another thing is get a little physical on it. Like, so if I have this new phrase in my life, and so if I start to mentally go down the path of doubting myself or going mentally down that path of thinking the old way, I'll like snap my fingers or clap my hands and think about the new way. So there's a lot of things. I'll bring magic into it. I can charge up a stone with this new way of thinking and hold that stone. So I'm just going to flip the script. I'm going to anchor it in.
Right. Now, a lot of people see prosperity magic. We're going to circle back here. A lot of people see prosperity magic as a one-time event rather than an ongoing practice. Now, what's the key to creating long-term financial flow instead of just chasing one big windfall?
I like to call it your financial GPS. The financial GPS is like, here's your long-term goal. I call it calling your shot. So there's your long-term goal. And that's more of a feeling, how you want to feel versus like a dollar amount. So, okay. So in your head, you want $1 million in the bank, and that's all well and good that you want $1 million in the bank. But what does that $1 million mean? How do you feel? How do you think you'll feel when you have that $1 million? Because it might not be $1 million that you want. It might be the things that $1 million represent.
Right.
So don't worry about the number. Don't worry about the big mansion or the boat or the car or the fancy clothes. Think about the feeling, because that feeling might come faster than the goods. So you can generate that feeling before you can generate the thing. And then when you start to have that feeling, then you become magnetic to the things. So when you have this GPS that you've created, then you can start doing the spells that get you there. So it's like spells along the way, and you just keep it going.
Right. I think that's an important thing. And I love takeaways, Jackie. I just love them. So, like with the Don't Be a Dick class, if you could give just one piece of advice, To someone struggling with prosperity magic, what would it be?
Don't cast a spell that sucks.
Like sucks the money out of your bank account. Don't do
Right.
it.
Like saying I want more money is a spell that sucks.
Right.
You didn't move any energy with that. So you want to really dive in to the whole picture. You want to understand the energy around what you're looking for in your life. Dig into the whole thing. Allow yourself to feel everything that this financial gain that you're looking for will bring to you, body, mind, and spirit. And don't be vague.
Right.
This vagueness is like, I'd like a little more money, or I'd like to feel this way. Write this spell as if it already happened.
Exactly. I think it's definitely some great advice. Now you, Jacki, are working on something new. It's called The 7 Keys to Attainment. Now,
Yeah.
can you say something about it? Or is that all, or did I kind of jump the ship there and it's hush
No, I'm so excited about this. You're going to see some social media teasers out there about this. I'm in the midst of recording a whole class. It's going to be 16 class. It's going to be a 16 lesson. What am I trying to say?
Like 16 modules.
16 module class. Thank you very much. So the 7 Keys of Attainment is a 16 module class. And I'm so excited about it because it is the way to move through your blocks. It's the way to understand where you are, find those hidden beliefs, clear them, own where you're going, empower yourself, go through all of these different steps, go through all of these different keys, turn all of these keys to attain what it is you want. I'm so excited about this. It's based on the 7 steps that I have in Coventry Magic, and what I've done is I've expanded them, and I'm so excited.
Now, how is this different from how you've approached teaching in the past?
This is a deep dive. Usually when I'm teaching, I get 90 minutes.
Right.
Or maybe I get
that's all I got, girls. No, I got 75.
Or maybe if I'm at if I go to a location, I get a whopping 3 hours.
Right.
This is 16 modules that float between 15 and 30 minutes with rituals, deep dives, and then homework, magic that you do on your own, a whole workbook. So we get to just go deep on each step. I'm in love with this.
So this is a different medium. This is an online medium, correct?
This is an online class.
Okay.
Yep. That you can do at your own pace.
Right.
So if you want to plow through them, there's going to be 2 modules per key. So we're going to dive into the shadow side, and then we're going to dive into how to really manifest that key. So it's just I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm finally doing it.
That's it. I mean, it's number one, it sounds very ambitious. But I think that is, with seeing a lot of the success of online witch conferences, I think it's the wave of the future. I think, the old days of everybody going to a convention center, although that it will probably still be around for several years. But I think it's fading. And I think that people are looking for something in which, because after I got done with Bending the Planets to Your Will, of course, so many people messaged me, Jacki, in regards to, are you going to turn this into an online course? The answer to that is I don't know. Are you going to do this? I don't know.
Turning it into an online course is a bigger lift than I thought it was.
Right.
Because when you're teaching a class in front of people and you make a change or shift in the middle of it, people don't notice your foible, your wobble, because you're like, oh, I just thought of something to make it better. But when you're recording it, you're like, oh, hang on, start over. Right. and I'm so in love with doing this and allowing it to be a self-study. And what's so much fun is we're putting it under the Witches Union Patreon.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be
how
a standalone.
How can people find that?
Actually, you can go to witchesunion.com and that takes you right to our Patreon.
Okay,
and
cool.
you can sign up at the free level and you'll get an email. Actually, the free level, you get all kinds of little fun stuff in your inbox. And then you'll get the notification when the class is ready. And I'm just so excited about all this stuff as I'm recording it. I'm like, so I'm recording it. And then as I'm reviewing the recording, I'm doing the work again. And wow, I'm doing the work again. And I'm seeing results. I mean, I did this work originally, which is how I came up with the content. And then now I'm doing the work again as a student after I record it. And I'm having these huge breakthroughs.
Well, isn't this actually the third time that you've gone through this process? Because before Coventry Magic was written 300 years ago. 500 years ago, didn't you have like a mini book or something that was on this?
Yep, I did.
And then Coventry Magic. And now this. Okay, so this is kind of your third iteration. Have you found where your thoughts and ideas have drastically changed over that period of time in regards to the way that you approach these steps?
I don't think they've drastically changed. I think they've changed. They've changed in order, and it's still 7. I tried to reduce it to 5. It's still 7, and it all came about because one of my dear friends was studying Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's stages of death and dying. And she was going through this. It was part of her master's thesis. And I looked at her and I'm like, well, so what are the stages of living? Right. And she looked at me and she goes, I haven't a clue. And so I started researching and looking into this. I've always surrounded myself with people studying psychology because I've always wanted to do that. I started Coventry so I could go to school to learn this. Instead, I surrounded myself with people studying this.
Should I raise my hand here, Jackie?
Yes, absolutely. Raise your hand. So, she helped me do some research on a few things to understand that there is nothing out there that says these are the stages of living.
Nothing.
There's nothing. So, in understanding these different philosophies, I just started to put together, I call them the 7 steps, but really they're keys. So kind of like if you turn this key and if you follow this process, you then step into the next key and you turn the next key and then you just become magnetic to what you want in life. And as I'm recording these keys and then doing the homework and having these amazing breakthroughs, and then things are shifting and changing in my life. And I'm watching this magical process because I'm blending the psychological process, the psychological magic with physical magic, with affirmation work, with different business principles. Yeah, it all comes together. And I am giddy with how this is working out.
That is amazing. And we are done, Jackie. We are
I can't wait to do a show about this and tell you all about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that show. Where I get to wear my Rachel Maddow outfit again. Which I am, interestingly enough, wearing a black t-shirt and a black hoodie. So I'm very Rachel Maddow at the moment.
I want to do a show on video where we're both wearing our hoodies.
Yeah.
And just being super relaxed and being our natural selves.
Oh.
And showing people how we just really are.
Maybe that'll be the 7 steps to attainment because, at the end of the day, I'm just a wrestling comic boy. So.
Right.
Which
I'm
people would be shocked about.
Right. I'm way more natural than you have seen in the past. So anyway, nature girl.
As just a reminder, this show is sponsored by CoventryCreations.com. If you have a problem in your life, regardless of what that problem is, we definitely have a candle for that. So make sure that you go over and check out CoventryCreations.com. Also, we have a calendar, and that calendar you will find in the show notes. It brings you I spend hours writing the monthly astrology, and now you can get it in your inbox before anybody else gets it. So you can get that and download that it can go into your Outlook, it can go into your Google, it can go into your Apple. You can put it in any of the calendars that you happen to use. So make sure that you sign up for that. Jacki, where can people find you?
You can find me on any of Coventry's social media, Facebook, Instagram. We're working on all the social media platforms. You can find us with Coventry Creations or Coventry Candles.
Absolutely. You can find me at Storm Cestavani everywhere except Facebook. At Facebook, I'm facebook.com/astrogossip because I like to talk about astrology. Also, this show, hit the like button, follow us, subscribe. That will help us out in regards to all these algorithmic things that are too much to even think about. But, unfortunately, we need them. So Jacki and I will not tell you what the date of the next show is, but there will be one. So what do they need to do in the meantime, Jacki?
Oh, live the magic.
Speak life, everybody. Have a great day.